Hey guys, it's Greg from BitGoblet again, and today I'm excited to talk to you all about this hunk of metal right here. It's the S3910-24TS networking switch by FS.com. It's a 24-port gigabit Ethernet switch that's aimed at the small to medium business market, priced at around $770. It's definitely not the cheapest option in this segment, as you can get switches from MikroTik or Ubiquiti, for example, for quite a bit less. But this switch has some tricks up its sleeve that we're going to talk about to see if it's a good value or not. And before we get started, I gotta disclose to you all that FS.com sent me this switch free of charge to do this video on, of which I'll be sending back after this video. And they also provided this SFP Plus DAC cable to aid in the review, since I didn't have a spare one lying around to run my hardware tests with. So with that out of the way, let's get started.
You smell that? It smells like a bit goblin.
Alright, first up, let's go over the physical characteristics of this switch. Upon unboxing, you're greeted with a nice, kind of muted gray around the majority of the chassis that, in my opinion, harkens back to like the medium gray look that you'd see on older gaming consoles. The front faceplate features a kind of shiny silver finish, and around the ports on the front you get a little bit of a lighter gray. Realistically, the aesthetics of a network switch really aren't that important, since they're kind of meant to be set up and forgotten about in a closet or a rack, but I kind of like the way it looks for what it's worth. As for connectivity, as I alluded to in the intro, on the front you've got 24 1 gigabit per second Ethernet ports, an RJ45 console port, 4 SFP Plus 10 gigabit per second ports, which in my opinion is pretty awesome, and a tiny little reset switch if you ever need it. The one side features what I'm assuming is a 40mm fan, and the other features a wider grille with no fans directly behind it. And the back features dual power supplies, which are not only redundant, which is a must in enterprise deployments, but they're also hot swappable by pulling the small lever to the side, which is handy in the event you need to replace them while the switch is active. Moving on, let's take a look at how to set up this switch, and to get to the setup, all you've got to do is run power and a network cable to the switch, and after it's finished powering on, you should be good to go. One thing to note is that it seems like this switch doesn't use DHCP by default to get an IP address, and instead it uses a statically set IP of 192.168.1.1. Not the most uncommon IP address to use, and this isn't the worst thing in the world since it does mean that no matter what, you will know what the IP will be. But you can't just plug it into your network straight out of the box and set it up immediately, since you'll either be using a different subnet for the rest of your network, or your switch's IP will conflict with your router, which usually is at that 1.1 address. So you will either need to reconfigure your PC to use the same subnet temporarily, or if you're already using that subnet, then you'll probably need to set it up before connecting it to the rest of your network so you don't run into any issues caused by an IP conflict. But once you are past that and go to 192.168.1.1 in your browser, I really like that it gives you an option to redirect to HTTPS immediately so that everything is encrypted while you're setting up your switch. But it is a little weird that it gives you this little warning page and asks you to do it instead of just automatically redirecting. It's not really a bad thing, it's just a little odd since I haven't really seen it before. Huh, that's odd. Hang on one moment. So I just turn my Wi-Fi off and back on, and for whatever reason, I can reach the switch now. Nothing has really changed, but whatever. Moving on, we need to log in with the default credentials, which are admin. Easy enough. And now we're prompted to set a new password. I'm going to use something simple for this test. I'm just going to use test password with the T and P capitalized, 123. Obviously, you should do something more secure than that. I would hope that would go without saying. But anyways, click modify and cool. Our password has been changed. Just wait a hot minute and you'll be redirected to the main management interface with a setup wizard. Here you can start configuring the essentials for your switch, like a static IP address, subnet mask if you need to change it, upstream gateway, DNS, oops, I meant for this to be a 22. Anyways, DNS servers, IP6 configuration if that matters to you, and time information. Easy enough, click save, click OK to confirm, and we'll need to reconnect to our switch on the new IP address, which means I'll need to reconfigure my laptop again. See you in a moment. Here we're at the switch's management dashboard, which gives us an overview of the switch itself. You can see we've got some hardware usage stats over here, the number of active ports, current time, model info of the switch, and a table with some port information. We only have one port active, which is one of the SFP Plus ports, so this all makes sense. I'm not going to walk you through the entirety of the interface, but it offers all of the usual configuration options that you'd expect from a managed switch. You can configure VLANs with multiple listening IP addresses. You can log system events to a remote syslog server. You can set up MAC address filtering, QoS, or quality of service rules and limits, and quite a lot more. However, I have noticed that the user interface is a little, let's just say, weird in some spots. Like enabling or disabling the HTTPS redirect for the management interface is available under System, Settings, and then the Enhancement tab. I'd expect this to be under like System Management Advanced or HTTPS or something more descriptive. And the Password tab is under System and then Settings, which I would expect to be under something like Authentication or Access. But this might just be like a lost in translation type of thing and really isn't that big of an issue. I also wouldn't expect one to use these functions that often, so it's really not that big of a deal. I also was attempting to set up VLANs on the switch to integrate with the rest of my network, and I noticed that under the ports menu, I was able to set or change the IP address that my switch listens on, but I wasn't able to change the VLAN that it was associated with, nor was I able to set another IP address on the same subnet, so I could still communicate with the switch while transitioning to a different VLAN ID using the same subnet. Again, this isn't something I would expect to come up that often. Usually VLANs are something that you set like once or twice, and then you really only add to them once in a blue moon. Alright, one last thing I want to mention before wrapping up this video is that I originally intended to be running some hardware performance tests on the switch and compare to my currently running MikroTik CSS326 switch. But realistically, these days, network switches pretty much just perform as they're rated for, unless you're getting something that's priced in the too good to be true range where the products are more scams than anything else, such as advertising a 10100 switch as gigabit or something along those lines. However, I did end up running some of the tests that I had planned, and I'll throw the results up on the screen for you now. The bandwidth testing I performed using iPerf3 between two hosts using Mellanox ConnectX-3 NICs with DAC cables connected to each switch, and it ended up giving us basically the same result averaged out over the 3 test runs, with my MikroTik switch coming out ever so slightly ahead on the sending side, but essentially is within margin of error. And for the latency testing, I used the ping command with a ping count of 100 and averaged it out over 3 runs. And technically, the MikroTik came out ahead again across the board here, with about 40 to 15 microseconds better. But that is such a small difference in the grand scheme of things, and both were well under 1 millisecond on average, so it really wouldn't affect my day-to-day usage of my devices using either switch. But overall, my thoughts on the Switch really just boil down to the price, since the management of the Switch is fine even if it is a little awkward at times, and the hardware performs basically like you'd expect. For $770 though, a 24-port gigabit Switch, even with the 4 SMP Plus ports, seems rather expensive when you compare it to some of the other options out there. For example, my MikroTik CSS326 switch, which has 24 gigabit ports, it does only have 2 10 gigabit ports, but it's also almost $600 less. And if you want, you could spend up just another $35 to get the CRS326, which gives you MikroTik's router OS and unlocks a lot of layer 3 capabilities on top of it. But if you want to switch with a less obtuse UI, MikroTik's interface, I will admit, is kind of gross. You could spring for Ubiquiti's 24 or 48 port Unify switches, which run for $460 and $570 respectively. These have some quirks, like the 24 port switch only has SFP 1 gigabit per second ports, so you're out of luck if you want 10 gig. And the 48 port switch only comes with 2 SDP Plus ports, though you do still get double the amount of Ethernet ports, so it's kind of like you win some, you lose some. And both the switches use Ubiquiti's Unify software, which is nice to consolidate the management of your Unify switches, access points, and any other Ubiquiti devices all in one management interface. So ultimately, the best I can say about this FS.com switch is if price is not an issue for you, and the connectivity of the S3910-24TS switch fits your needs exactly, then honestly, it's not a bad switch by any means, and I'd recommend it. I liked things like the redundant power supplies, which both the Ubiquiti and MikroTik switches I mentioned do not have. The 4 SMP Plus ports on this switch of this caliber is actually pretty good. And the UI looks decent. I would say it looks a lot better than MikroTik's UI, even if it wasn't as configurable. But if price is a concern, which I would expect it to be for a lot of people, whether it's in a home lab or a small to medium business, then I'd recommend springing for the $210 MikroTik CRS326, combined with a MikroTik CRS317 switch, which has 16 10 gigabit per second SFP Plus ports for just under $500. Now, that combo is a little bit less convenient, with it being 2 switches instead of just 1, but it'll run you in total about $60 to $70 less. and it gives you a lot more room to expand in the event you want to add a lot more 10 gigabit devices. Alright guys, that's all I have for this video, and I'd like to thank fs.com again for being awesome and sending me the switch to do this video. I'm actually releasing this video well after the original deadline that we agreed to, and I really appreciate them still working with me on this. Now, of course, as always, I want to hear from you all about your thoughts on this video. Let me know if you've got personal experience with these switches, whether you like them or not, if there's anything you think I could have done better in this video, or if there's any networking equipment you'd like me to take a look at in the future. Whatever it is, be sure to drop a comment down below. If you disliked the video, then you know what to do, but if you did like it, then go hit that like button and also consider getting subscribed and hitting the bell icon so you don't miss my future videos. I've also got a Discord server if you'd like to join the community and just chat and hang out with us, or if you need it, we can try to help you with your networking problems. I hope you all have a great day, and I will catch you in the next one.